Happy Chinese New Year today to everyone. Actually, a student of mine in my class is Chinese. He taught me how to say it in Chinese, but I will not venture into it. So I just want to say welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Freely from the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center. I'm also Associate Professor of Religious Studies. I teach both Islam and the Holocaust here at Manhattan College. So this semester we have 2 more events left. One is on March 26th with Dr. Hasia Diner, who is one of the foremost Holocaust scholars of religion of America and the Holocaust. And she's going to come and talk about immigration and what that meant for Jews that were trapped in mainly Eastern Europe and were not allowed to come to our shores. And then on April 30th, we have Marty Brownstein, and my Religion and Holocaust class will be reading his book, Among the Righteous, and he's going to talk about people who rescued Jews during the Holocaust, especially Catholics, and stories and narratives of that. So those are 2 more events, and then we end our semester in May, so sorry, no more programming until the fall. So anyway, welcome everyone. I'm really honored here tonight to have Sabeeha Rehman, who is the author of Threading My Prayer Rug, and she's also a friend of mine for quite some time now. She and I worked closely with Daisy Khan, who heads a women's organization, still here in New York City. I was living in Los Angeles at that time, and I came to New York City for that first conference, and she and I also met in Malaysia. In Istanbul, we were in Istanbul, yeah. So we have this kind of threaded connection, right? And we have similar backgrounds. She's Pakistani American. I'm Pakistani American. She's a Muslim. I'm Muslim. And we're maybe a few years apart and different stories and narratives and backgrounds. So I really appreciate her work. My students read her book and appreciate her journey because it's intimate for me, but also it shows me the difference of somebody who comes from the same background but has completely different experiences in America. I want to say that Sabeeha Rehman and I were also involved with the controversy for Park 51 when Daisy Khan and Imam Raouf Faisal tried to open up a mosque. And we were actually on the supportive committee of that whole debacle, where we realized how much hatred there was for Muslims in America. I was in LA on the phone all the time in these conference calls that we had as women, where we just stuck together. And it was a very powerful kind of bonding feeling with Muslim women across the board, and even non-Muslim women who came in support of Muslims building what we thought people understood and knew that it was going to be a community center. So with that being said, I'm going to just say a little bit about her book and then let her speak because you're here to hear her, not me. So her book was shortlisted for the 2018 William Saroyan International Prize for Writing, received honorable mention in spirituality by the San Francisco Book Festival Awards 2017, and was listed as top 10 religion and spirituality books 2016. Top 10 diverse nonfiction books in 2017 and by book list. Excerpts of the book were featured in the Wall Street Journal, Salon.com, and Tiferet. She's a contributor to the House of Worship column of the Wall Street Journal. Please welcome Sabeeha Rehman.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum, the Muslim greeting of peace. Thank you very much, Mehnaz, for that beautiful introduction, and thank you, Dr. Bill Clyde, for inviting me to come here and speak to your students. And thank you, Mehnaz, for organizing, arranging this, and having your students read the book. I hope you liked it. The first time I met my husband was on the first time I spoke to my husband was on my wedding night. It was love at first night. Our marriage was arranged. Now, when you talk about arranged marriages, the first thing that comes into your mind is, oh, that poor woman. She got forced into a marriage. Well, what about her husband? What about the guy? Didn't he get forced into the marriage? Isn't he, poor guy, he was married against his will. But that's not how it happened with me. I'll start by reading a little excerpt, a brief one from the first chapter of my book called It's Arranged. November 1971, Rawalpindi, Pakistan. You're getting married, Mummy announced. I was at the CV College for Women in between my postgraduate English literature classes, hanging out with my friends. Mummy had tracked me down. Your fiancé has arrived from New York, she informed me. He has to return to America in 2 weeks, so you are taking off. Let's go, I have to take you to the tailor to have your wedding outfit stitched. I had gotten engaged a few weeks ago. A wedding date had not been talked about, but I figured that it was in the distant future. But now, he was here, all the way from New York, so I had to get married. And that was that. So I get into the car and my mom drives me over to the tailor's, and on the way I'm sitting in and daydreaming. So, my fiancé has come from New York and I'm going to be seeing him in a few days. What is it going to be like? Will he speak to me? Will I be too shy to talk to him? And I wonder what his voice is like. And oh God, please make him taller than me in high heels. It had started when my future prospective mother-in-law-to-be came to our house to propose for her son's hand in marriage, who was a doctor in America. I didn't know her. My parents had never seen her son, the suitable boy. I had never seen him, only my grandparents knew him. So she came, and she and my mom sat in the sunroom, and I brought in the tea, and I served them the tea, and then I withdrew into my bedroom. Because I'm not supposed to know what's going on. And I knew that now she was going to propose to my mom, and whereas everybody in the family knows that I know what's going on, I'm not supposed to know what's going on. So I went to my room, and after a little while, and I had noticed that my future prospective mother-in-law was carrying a yellow envelope, a big yellow envelope. So I figured that probably that envelope has the photos of the suitable boy. After a while, Mummy comes into my room, closes the door, and she's carrying that yellow envelope. She sits down, opens the envelope, and out come the pictures. And here is this young man. These are black and white photos. He's standing in front of the Washington Monument with a jet flying on top over the cherry blossom trees. He's wearing this nice, smart blazer, and he's very good looking. So I'm trying to read 1,000 words into these pictures, and they're not speaking to me. And I'm wondering, how tall is he? What is his voice like? What is his mannerism like? How does he sound? But he's a good-looking guy. And that's all I could tell, and that is a good start. So anyhow, the whole family descended in my home, because a marriage, an arranged marriage, is everybody's business. My uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, my cousins, my siblings, my parents, their close friends, the friends of friends, they were all there. And they peppered my poor future prospective mother-in-law-to-be with all kinds of questions. Give me that picture, let me see that photo again. Photos going back and forth, questions going back and forth. When she left, they all assembled, and they had the likes of a round table meeting. The agenda to accept or not accept the marriage proposal. He is a doctor. Plus, New York is too far away. Minus. The grandparents know the family very well. Plus, they say he has a very good temperament, is very responsible, is very caring. Plus, but we haven't seen him. Minus. What if he decides to settle in America and not return to Pakistan? Huge minus. No one has seen him since he went to America over 2 years ago. Has America changed him? Plus? Minus? And where was I in all these discussions? Right in the middle, listening, but also listening to my inner voice. Khalid's proposal, his name was Khalid. Khalid's proposal felt right. How irrational is that? I just had the feeling that this proposal was right for me. But I said nothing. I had not learned to trust my instincts, and I respected my parents' apprehension. So anyhow, one thing led to the other. The details are all in the book. My mother did her due diligence, the background checks, not like an FBI investigation, but close. 10-star ratings. So I'm going to give away the ending. I married him. Here he is, 47 years later. I fly into the sunset all the way to New York and land at JFK in December 1971 on a cold, wintry, snowy, blustery, bleak December morning. And life never looked so bright. I was in love. My husband takes me to his apartment in Queens, New York. And on that very first evening, he takes me for a loop. He makes dinner. Now, understand. In Pakistan, the kitchen is a no man's land. I don't think my father ever held a potato. And when I saw my Prince Charming peeling away the layers of the onion, I just fell in love all over again. Next morning, he had to go to work, so he gave me some cash and told me how to get to the post office to mail the letters. Now, understand, this was 1971. This poor E.T. could not phone home. You had to write those letters on the aeroplane and mail them by airmail. So I've written the letters letting my parents know that I got here safely. And he said, just step out of the building, make a right, go all the way down, make a left at the next light, and then you go straight down, and then you turn around, and on the post office is on your left. You won't miss it. I get dressed. I put on my shimmering, shiny outfit. I put on my gold dangling earrings, my golden choker, my gold bangles, pick up my golden pocketbook in my gold pumps, and I walk out into the streets of Jamaica, Queens, 1971. I didn't miss the post office. But I did get very confused because I'm standing there making change. He's saying, give me the nickel, give me the dime. I'm looking at all this change and I cannot understand why a 5-cent coin is larger than a 10-cent coin. I step out into the streets and I am shocked at the poverty. People are walking around in tattered jeans with gaping holes at the knees. I walk into a drugstore and this nice old gentleman says to me, "You must be new." "How did you know?" "Young lady, I wouldn't walk the streets of New York looking like that." "Why not?" "You're gonna get mugged." I don't know if I ran home in shoes that were not meant for running, and when Khalid came home in the evening, I said, why didn't you tell me? I didn't know you would get all dressed up in finery and gold and walk out onto the streets. In Pakistan, brides get all dressed up in gold and finery and walk out on the streets. And you know what? This is not Pakistan. Anyhow, I grew up, learned the ways, settled down into the life of a homemaker, had 2 boys, and I drifted away from the faith. Not because I was too busy raising children, which of course I was, but the environment wasn't there. This was 71, 72. There were no mosques. I didn't hear the call to prayer. I didn't see any prayer signs or Ramadan signs anywhere. There was no Muslim community. There were no Muslims that I knew. Ramadan came and went, and the communal spirit that goes with breaking of the fast every evening together with family was missing. So I stopped fasting. And when I did try to say my prayers, and I went down in prostration, little toddler would come and sit on my head. So I put away my prayer rug. It was only when my children started growing up that the 2 of us got nervous about what we're going to do. What if they lose their faith? I also had a dilemma. We both did. To what extent do we assimilate so that our children don't lose their religious identity, but we don't compromise our cultural values either? So what happens on the holiday of Eid, the day celebrating the end of Ramadan? What if school is open? Do my children take the day off? Will they have an arranged marriage like mommy and daddy? And do I get them a Christmas tree? So I'll read from the chapter called The Christmasization of Eid. Mommy, why can't we have a Christmas tree? I had been expecting this question since the first Christmas lights went up after Saqib's birth. I, the perfect planner, anticipator of all scenarios, had laid the groundwork and would be ready to deal with this question when asked. Within 6 months of Saqib's birth, we had a critical mass of Muslim families, a total of 3. 3 families from the subcontinent with 3 little boys and all very worried. How are we going to explain to our children why we don't celebrate Christmas? How does one explain to a child that yes, as Muslims, we do celebrate the Prophet, we do believe in Prophet Jesus, but we don't celebrate his birth with a tree? That's not good enough for a child. Who doesn't love the festivities of lights? Santa Claus ringing the bell, shoppers walking out of Macy's with piles of gifts, children lined up at the windows of Saks Fifth Avenue, the Radio City Christmas Spectacular, the towering tree of Rockefeller Center, and the city as decked as a Pakistani bride. Well, if we love it, won't our children? Won't they feel that they are missing out on something? Won't they wish that they were born Christian? Oh dear. Now don't just stand there, do something. I called my Jewish friend Nancy. Minorities reaching out to minorities. You have to come up with a substitute. When is your religious holiday? Make a big deal out of it. Okay. So we will Christmasize Eid, give it a makeover. First of all, we're all going to take the day off, all 3 families, no excuses. 2, we adopt one another as families, get dressed in the traditional shimmering outfit. And 3, we all go to Manhattan for Eid prayers. We come back, have a big potluck party, and we dress up the apartment inside out in colored lights. No worries if our neighbors say Christmas in October. We exchange gifts for the children, replacing the traditional Eid of cash gift with sparkling gift-wrapped toys and having them open it and say, yeah, ooh, ah, just as Christmas. But number six, we are not going to get them a tree. We pulled it off. Year after year, Eid after Eid, more children came, parties moved out of living rooms into basements, and we were smug. Our children, we believed, would never miss Christmas. I was wrong. Asim, my son, was 6 when on one Christmas morning he woke up crying with muffled sobs. What is it, Asim? I went running to his room. I wish we had a Christmas tree. Why couldn't we have had a tree? It's just a tree. What was I afraid of? That we will lose our children to another faith? That somehow their identity as Muslims will get compromised over a tree? He is crying, for crying out loud. What was my problem? Depriving my child because I couldn't deal with my insecurities? I called Nancy. So get him one. Well, I never got him the tree. By the time next Christmas rolled around, I had convinced myself that he had outgrown it. Decades later, when I walked into Saqib's home during the holidays, I saw to my surprise and relief a mini Christmas tree in the living room. Sadia, my conservative, nice Muslim daughter-in-law, had demonstrated more sense than I. So now what do we do? I had gone to a Catholic school in Pakistan for my schooling. I started the day with the Lord's Prayer. I went to a convent run by nuns in habits. I call it the hijab. So I was totally ignorant in the faith. I had the Maulvi, the cleric, come to the house every day when I was 10 to teach me to read the Quran in Arabic, and by the time I was 11, I had read the entire Quran from right to left in Arabic, and with that, my religious education was considered complete. The fact that I didn't understand a word of what I was reading was considered inconsequential. So I grew up strong in faith in my heart and totally ignorant. So now how do I make good Muslims out of my children? I went into a bookstore looking for books. Of course, there were no Islamic books. But in the children's section, I found a book called Stories from the Bible. And when I looked through it, it had all the same stories that my grandfather used to tell me. The story of Abraham, of Moses, of Jesus, of Jacob, of Joseph, of Adam and Eve. All the same stories that are in the Quran. Only Prophet Muhammad was missing, and I figured I'd wing that. So I got the book, brought it home, and nighttime stories became daytime stories. But then that wasn't enough either. They needed more. They needed a community. One day, I was hanging out with my neighbors. Oh, and by the way, we bought our first house in an Orthodox Jewish community. Now, I had no idea what I was getting into. We liked the house, we bought the house. And on Saturday, I decided to go visit my neighbors and introduce myself, and I'm ringing doorbells and nobody's answering. Then we go to visit a colleague of Khalid's, a physician, Jewish, and he says, where did you buy a new house? Willowbrook. Oh, but that's an Orthodox Jewish community. How are you going to fit in? I had no idea what she was talking about. So I came home and I told my dad, who was visiting from Pakistan, I said, that's what this Jewish woman said about this Jewish community. And my dad says to me, and I'm going to read from the chapter called A Muslim Amongst Orthodox Jews. He said to me, people of all faith, no matter what their faith, make good neighbors. They live by the rules, they are disciplined in their way of life, and it's bound to have a positive influence on your children. He was right. And I even got a bonus out of it. I no longer had to explain to my children why we eat only halal food, the equivalent of kosher, why we don't have Christmas, because they don't have Christmas either. And in winter time, when the Christmas trees were blinking on the other block, here menorahs did the talking. So minorities living amongst minorities. But anyhow, getting back to my neighbor. So one day, I'm standing chatting with my neighbor, an Orthodox Jewish woman, at the sidewalk, and she says to me, excuse me, I have to leave to go pick up my son from Hebrew school. You have a Hebrew school? I asked, feeling envious and deprived. Of course, don't you have a religious school for your children? A meek no. You need to start one. Don't do it for yourselves, do it for your children. Embarrassed, I tried to make excuses. We were new, didn't know many Muslim families on Staten Island, not many with children, definitely no teachers. Where are we going to get a place? How would we get started? And even as I was talking and hearing myself, I knew that I was making excuses. And the only thing that stood between me and a religious school for my children was me. One day, we did get that Sunday school going, but the spark of that came from my Jewish neighbor. So to get Sunday school going, we needed families. We needed Muslim families. We didn't know Muslim families. So we picked up the yellow pages and started going through it. Does anybody here remember the yellow pages? Telephone directory. On paper. Looking for Muslim names, hoping that we could find a few, and then 2 new, 2 more, and 4 new, 8 more, and 8 new, 12 more, and finally we had a bit of a mess. And we started meeting in a basement, then in a rented place, and eventually we had a regular Sunday school going. Problem number 1, actually problem number 2, no teachers. There were no Muslim teachers. So what do? We became teachers. Oh, but wait, we are ignorant. Anybody going to Pakistan, can you please bring some books? We need to educate ourselves so that we can educate our children, because now our children were asking questions that mommy and daddy didn't have the answer to, because we grew up in a Muslim culture where nobody asked questions, and now our children are saying, so why do we pray 5 times a day? Well, because we do. And that's all we knew. So we had to educate ourselves and stay one level ahead of our children. Our children then started bringing us back into the faith. One day my son comes home from school and says, Mommy, it's prayer time. Yeah, let's get out those prayer rugs. Mommy, Ramadan starts tomorrow, aren't you going to fast? Yeah, sure, of course I'm going to fast. Honey, vacation's over, start fasting. So our children were able to bring us back into the fold of religion. Now we needed room for a mosque. There were no mosques on Staten Island where we lived. And there was a huge problem. In the Islamic faith, you are not allowed to take interest on a loan. Pay interest or take interest. Now we all had homes with mortgages. So we were all breaking the rules. But we were told that when it comes to the mosque, that's sacred. No breaking of the rules. So what do? You fundraise. So we fundraised and fundraised and fundraised until people stopped looking us in the eye. We couldn't go to the next community and ask them for money because they were doing their fundraising. And eventually, we had just enough money to buy an old empty warehouse, which sat there for 2 years, and we did more fundraising so that we could get one level done, and then another and another. And only last year, this was in the late 80s, only last year they put up their minarets. That's how slow the process was. And that's one reason why most of the mosques in the United States that you see are storefronts. It's because of this limitation. Okay, the mosque is built. We open the doors, and all of a sudden we see people from all shapes of life showing up. Muslims who are Pakistani Indian, African American, Albanian, European, Turkish, Kosovo, Bosnia, Malaysia, Egyptians. Everybody was practicing Islam differently. And everybody thought that their way was the right way and the others weren't doing it right. And that's when we realized that so much of what we practice is the consequence of our culture and tradition, and we associate it with the religion. So now we had to go back to the books, the Quran, separate culture from theology, take the theology and then wrap it up in the American colors of red, white and blue. An American expression of Islam. Before I go further with that, what was happening meanwhile is that I, like many others, were becoming Americanized big time, and we didn't even realize it. So here's a glimpse from the chapter, The Americanization of Yours Truly. Would you like something to drink? Here is how it goes in Pakistan. You go visiting. It could be anybody, friend, family, stranger. You're immediately served a drink, juice or soda. The host never asks you if you would like a drink. It is a given that you will be served a drink. A little later, the help will wheel the trolley in and you are served tea, mithai, cake, some kebabs, samosas, fruit chaat. Again, the host didn't ask you if you wanted some. Have some cake, the host says. No, no thank you. You have to say no thank you, otherwise you will be considered to be greedy. Oh, please, do have some, the host insists. No, I'm really fine. Oh, please, I insist, have some. Oh, well, okay, if you insist. Then and only then do you take a small piece or helping. Please, have some more, take another kebab. No, one is fine. Just one more, and she puts it in your plate. Once you're done eating, the back and forth starts all over again. Got it? Here is what happened in New York in 1971. I paid my first visit to an American friend. Would you like something to drink? The host asked. No, no thank you. Okay, said the host. And that was that. I had not eaten all afternoon thinking I'm going visiting. Surely she'll be serving me some tea and some drinks and something to eat. And I don't want to overeat. I was also thirsty. Now what? I couldn't backtrack. What's done is done. She had asked me an honest question, and I had given her a not so honest but Pakistani culturally appropriate answer. And I got what I asked for. I stayed hungry and thirsty the whole time. Did I learn fast? Now here is what happened in New York just a few years ago. Some friends from Pakistan were in town, and we went and met over coffee at a cafe. Later we walked over to my apartment and I asked them, would you like something to drink? No, thank you, they said. Okay. So anyhow, getting Americanized, the American Muslim identity, our children started exhibiting an American Muslim identity, one that was wholly American and wholly Islamic. Some things changed, some things didn't change. What didn't change was the values and the basic creed, the prayer, the fasting, the pilgrimage, the belief in the angels, the belief in all the prophets that preceded Prophet Muhammad, all that, and charity. All that did not change. But what has changed is how they express themselves, how they dress, their language, their music, the weddings. Weddings have changed. So when I got married, I wore a red dress. That was the Pakistani way. Here the brides are now wearing white. The Quran doesn't say anything about what the color of the bride's dress should be. When I got married, the religious ceremony was considered to be a very private ceremony, and then the festivities were in a banquet hall. So during the religious ceremony, I was home. I was upstairs in the bedroom with the girls. My fiancé was downstairs in the living room with the guys, and the cleric was running back and forth getting the consents and the signatures and the I-do's and the whole thing. And after we were religiously married, we then went to Hotel Intercontinental and had a big banquet and celebration. That was Pakistan, is still Pakistan. Here now, when my children got married, the official ceremony was conducted in the Hyatt, the religious ceremony, in the Hyatt Hotel, on the stage, in the presence of all the hundreds of people. Very Islamic, because Islam requires a marriage to be a public announcement, and very American, the festivities. Brides will walk in with a bouquet, walking on the arm of their dad. In Pakistan, they walked on the arm of their mom. Okay. Brides are no longer changing their names after wedding. I changed my name. I was Sabeeha Akbar. I became Sabeeha Rehman, not because this was the Islamic way, but because this was the British way. Pakistan was a British colony, and their culture had become anglicized. Now, Muslim women are studying the Quran and are saying, wait a minute, I'm supposed to keep my father's name because that is my permanent identity. So they're not changing their names. Very Islamic, very American. There will be Christmas trees. There will be interfaith marriages. Interfaith marriages with people of the book is permissible in Islam. How we give thanks has changed. In Pakistan, if you had to give thanks, somebody passed an exam, had a baby, you'd cook a lot of dessert and you'd portion it into single servings and you'd go knocking on the doors of your neighbors and giving them their portion and saying, we are celebrating. Here, we have Thanksgiving, we have Mother's Day, we have Father's Day, all very Islamic in their values and very American. The man that holds the mic has changed, and by that I mean the imams and the religious leaders. When we opened the door of our mosque, there were no religious leaders. We had to import the imam from Pakistan. He didn't speak the language. He had grown up in a different culture. Our children couldn't relate to him. So we had to be the buffers in between. Now we have the Zaytuna College, we have the institutes in Harvard Seminary, where we are training homegrown, American-born young men and women to become religious leaders. Mehnaz is just one example of a very well-known, well-established religious scholar and teacher. And one day, we will have the woman in that position as well. It's creeping. But most importantly, what has changed in the American version of Islam is the woman's role in the mosque. In Pakistan, I never went to the mosque. Women never went there. It was a man's thing. They would have these little gatherings at home and that was it, called a milad. Now, the women are on the boards of mosques, they are the presidents of the mosque, they are making decisions, they are running the mosque, they are doing the fundraising, they are setting the curriculums for what the children will learn, they are leading the way, and it's only going to get better. So now my children are in medical school and law school, and it's time for them to get married. And every Pakistani mother was dreaming of a Pakistani bride and a Pakistani groom for a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law. It just had to be. Couldn't be any other way. Then they said, no, all right, as long as the Muslim. And then it was okay as long as it's the people of the book. So that shift started taking place. But when my older son got married, I did not arrange his marriage. I engineered it. And you can read all about that whole long episode in my book. I'm not going to give it away. But things were not always that rosy. In 2001, the towers fell. And after 9/11, nothing was ever the same. We were vilified in the media. We went through a very painful process. And Muslims started coming out of their shell and started doing a lot of outreach to make themselves known. But then something happened that changed the trajectory of our lives. Our grandson, 8 years old, was detained at the airport. 8 years old. I'll read the last part. Umar, my 8-year-old grandson, was detained. Umar has autism. They were getting on a flight to go to Disney World when Umar got taken aside at the airport and was placed in a holding area. I was at the office when I got a text from Sabeeha, my daughter-in-law. Umar has been detained. They say his name is on the no-fly list of terrorists. What the? Can't they see that he's 8 years old? I texted. They say they know that he couldn't be a terrorist, but they have to follow procedure. Which is what? They have to put his name in a database, and if no match, he will be cleared. How long will it take? A few hours. We will definitely miss our flight. Where are you? In a holding area, all of us. Hang in there. I'm calling the press. I was president of the National Autism Association's New York Metro chapter and had contacts in the media. I got going and got the word out in my autism network, which was huge. The Age of Autism immediately posted the news online. 8-year-old with autism on terror list detained at airport. The New York Times demurred. They had done a similar story recently and were not interested. I called the Huffington Post. Another text from Sabeeha. He is hungry and they won't let any of us bring him something to eat. He is stimming. Stimming is when a person with autism engages in self-stimulatory repetitive behavior such as hand flapping, rocking, and pacing. My grandson with autism, a little 8-year-old, hungry, stimming, and detained. Has our nation gone crazy? I called my assemblyman. He is 8 years old with autism and they are treating him like a terrorist. The assemblyman was a New Yorker. The airport was in Philadelphia. I got a lot of sympathy, but no one could help me. A text from Sabeeha. They have cleared him. The terrorist is in his 20s. No match. My dear little grandson, and I couldn't do a thing to help him. I made a lot of noise. Autism man's backed me up, but we couldn't make a dent in the system. Umar is now 17, a handsome young boy with a sprouting mustache. What's going to happen the next time he gets on a plane? I hold my breath and I pray. And that is when my husband started saying to me, I have been asking you that you need to write a book. And now is the time to do it. It's not enough that we are speaking to people in our comfort zones on the East Coast doing interfaith dialogue, we need to make ourselves known to people out in the rest of the country, in the middle, in the heartland, on the coasts on the west, to the mountains on the north, to the deserts on the south. You need to tell your story. So I put pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, and I wrote my memoir. I wrote this by telling the story, by taking you into my dining room, into my kitchen, having you sit at my table, inhale the aroma of chicken curry, listen into our intimate conversations, get incensed when the media bashes us, get involved in our Muslim issues, rejoice when we built our first mosque, and get teary-eyed when my son fell in love, our son. I wrote this book because I want the reader to know that the heart and soul of a Muslim mother is like that of any other. That we have the same desires. My son, the doctor. We have the same fears. I hope it's not cancer. And I want the readers to know that Islam does not oppress women. Misguided people do. That Islam does not advocate violence. Misguided people do. And that the values of Islam are entirely compatible with the American values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want the reader to know that we are not a monolith. We are not a one-size-fits-all. We are not profilable. Hijab and beard does not define us. The country of birth does not define us. The color of our skin does not define us. We are all children of one God. I want the reader to look into the heart of a Muslim mother and to listen to her voice. And by that I mean that I did the audio narration of the book because I want the listener to hear the emotion in my voice, to know how it felt, to know how it felt to rejoice, to know how it felt to be vilified. And because I don't want my children and my young grandchildren, now teenagers, to be afraid to say, I am a Muslim. So I urge you to please tell our stories to your friends, to your network, share my story, my husband's story with people that you know so that they can come to know us. I Skype with book clubs all over the country. Oh yes, and it's Valentine's Day. Thinking about a gift? This is a love story. I have piles of gifts over there. It has no calories, it is non-perishable, it is recyclable, so please share this story with your friends. And thank you for listening. And while I'm still not competing with the President of the United States, we still have an hour to go. And I appreciate your being here. I'll be happy to take questions.
I encourage the students to ask questions first. Yes, please.
I'm just wondering how other Muslims or even your own family reacted to your book, and if there was any negative criticism or if it was all supportive.
Supportive or reacting to what?
Your book.
Oh, so how has my family and the Muslim community reacted to my book? Well, my family, this is partly their story. They're very proud of it. They're very happy that the book was written, the reasons for why it was written, and that it has been well received. In the Muslim community, for the large part, it has been very well received because these families who read it, they look at it and say, this is my story. This is what I went through. And the children read it. One of the students was just telling me, the young adults, and saying, now I understand, where my parents were coming from. There has been a marginal group out there that feel that my views are a bit too liberal. So there's that element as well.
Yeah,
Thank you for the question.
I just want to say, from the Muslim American community, at least here in our piece, it's been received extremely extremely well. And she's been around the whole country. So it's not just New York, it's been everywhere. So we always have groups that are going to say it's too conservative, it's too liberal. But if you take the mainstream Muslim view, it's usually first.
Yes.
How did you adjust to the different culture of Saudi Arabia when you were living there?
So the question is, how did you adjust to the different culture of Saudi Arabia when you were living there? My husband and I moved to Saudi Arabia for 6 years, from 2001 to 2007. Between that time period, we were there when 9/11 happened. How did I adjust to the culture? I was working in a hospital, which was established by the Hospital Corporation of America. So it was operating very much along the American lines. And therefore, the Saudi staff over there was enamored by Americans. So any American staff person working in that hospital was looked up as being the expert in their area. So if I was sitting in a conference room and I spoke, everybody listened, whether it was men or women or Saudi men in their garb, because I was wearing my American hat and I was perceived to be the best in the business. That is the perception that Saudis have of American, that they are very professional and they know their job. So from a professional perspective, I found it to be a very fulfilling experience. Culturally, every time I stepped out, this was Riyadh, I had to wear the abaya. Not in the hospital, but in public, you had to. I actually, if you can separate the idea that I am being forced to do this, I have to wear it, like it or not, if you can separate that from, and just separate that, I actually liked it, because I didn't have to worry about what to wear. It didn't matter where I went, all I had to do was throw a cloak over me. Nobody's about a bad hair day, just wrap that thing around your head and you're ready for the day. So in many ways it was easy to adapt to, particularly because our employees took very good care of us. They made sure we had all kinds, there were compounds, the swimming pools, the movie theaters, all inside a compound, of course, that you were able to preserve the culture in your compounds that you were used to. So from that perspective, it was a good experience. Professionally, it was a great experience. Outside of there is a lot that needs to change, and we all know what that is. But thank you for that question. Yes.
I'm guessing that your children, did they experience anti-Muslim sentiment? How did they deal with it? Or it didn't come up because of the community where you were living?
So the question is, did our children experience anti-Muslim sentiment? Or did it not come up because of where we were living? We were living in Staten Island. They went to both private and public schools. In fact, our older son went to the Bronx High School of Science. They did not experience anti-Muslim sentiments. I mean, there was one thing that the TV was always saying, Muslim terrorists, and that is what we were always very concerned about, but nothing personal or nothing direct, until 9/11 happened. And that too was in an indirect way. My son was leaving the mosque after Friday prayers, and there were hecklers standing and heckling the people and saying, go back to where you came from. So only to that extent. We have been fortunate that we did not experience anything directly. Thank you.
Let's take 2 more questions and then we can have Sabeeha sign her book so we can come in after. So,
Ron, thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Your experience, has that inspired other writers, other colleagues to write about their culture? Like I heard you're writing another book with someone else from a different culture, and how is that? So can you tell us about that?
So the question is, has my book inspired others to write? Actually, it was the other way around. People like Mehnaz and her colleagues, they were writing books, and those books were being so well received that really, other than my husband, primarily, but that really gave me the inspiration that, one Muslim woman can write and get published in America. And yes, now I'm co-authoring a book with a Jewish gentleman about Muslim-Jewish relations in the U.S. Thanks.
When you established the mosque, did you run into opposition?
When we established the mosque, did we run into opposition? This was pre-9/11. We opened the doors of our mosque in 1990. Not only did we not get opposition, but my husband went to see the borough president who welcomed him and said, "How can I help?" And paved the way and made it easy for us to get all our approvals and make sure that there was the community that lived around the mosque was appreciated because this warehouse had been standing over there, an eyesore, and now all of a sudden there are people who are taking care of it. And so we did not. Post 9/11, those efforts have met with resistance, and we know that. Thank you.
If you'd like to buy Sabeeha Rehman's book, it's here, and she's going to come and personally sign it to you. It's only $15 as a discounted price. So we're going to buy it. I know both my students have it, but the rest should be. Yeah, credit card accepted. Yeah.
I saw it happen.